guys! Today we'll be recapping a manhwa called The Princess's Double Life. Please like the video and subscribe. It really helps us a lot. Enjoy! Our story begins in an unlikely place for a princess. A prison. A young girl sits inside a cell where she is visited by a man in uniform. Let's not beat around the bush. This guy is crazy handsome, and clearly royalty too, from the look of his clothes. He tells the girl that he needs her help, at which point she perks up and flashes him a smile. But the man wants more than just a favor, because this guy has his sights set on becoming emperor. And that's no small feat. You see, the Hexen Empire already has an emperor, and a successor who is alive and well, and that is not this guy. He's not even second in line to the throne. He's the youngest brother of the emperor, which puts him third in line behind his older brother and the crown prince. So then, how the heck does he plan on reaching that crown? The girl in the cell also seems surprised. Actually, she just laughs in his face. This guy is the Grand Duke Rexid van Hexen. Famous for his combat skills, he is known as the Black Wolf of the battlefield, strength of the empire. Only problem is, he's not got half the brain needed for a position of emperor, and he has double the bloodlust of the usual man. And pretty much everyone knows it. He's never received any marriage proposals despite his status because he's pretty much the shame of the imperial family. That's why he wants to team up with this girl, to use her brains to get closer to the crown. And even though she knows he doesn't have a chance, she has no choice but to agree. You see, she's a death row prisoner. It's either help this bozo or die. With the agreement set, he promises to pick her up first thing in the morning, freeing her from life in prison to become his new tactician. You should know, by the way, that this girl is more than meets the eye. She entered the prison entirely of her own free will, pretending to be arrested and taken in. She was planning to escape at dawn anyway, so I guess she didn't need to take the offer? The truth is, the girl actually has been reborn in this world from a whole nother universe. In her past life, she was a talented scammer who tried her hand at just about everything. But she flew too close to the sun and one day tricked the wrong person. She was murdered at the age of 28 and arrived in this world as a poor young beggar. Do you think she's learned from the consequences of her crimes in her past life? No, obviously not. She's doing just the same in this one, only this time, she's messing with an empire. The world she is reincarnated to is a bit like 18th century Europe, except with magic. And that magic makes it a heck of a lot easier to commit crimes and scam people. That's how this girl has been operating, slowly making a name for herself as the most famous swindler in this world, known as the Faceless Criminal, or even sometimes Viper. Which is a very cool name. I mean, Viper? Surely that's every criminal's dream nickname. Obviously, as a con artist, she's not exactly popular, but one thing is undisputed, and that's her genius. That's why the Grand Duke came to her for help after all. But since she trusts her abilities more than his potential, this faceless criminal is going to make a break for it. Using a simple candle to melt her fork into a key, she unshackles herself in no time. The plan is to make an escape through the sewers. She's got about half an hour to get in and out the other side before the drain is scheduled to fill up with, well, you can guess what. If she's not fast enough, not only will she drown, but it'll be one seriously stinky death. But she must have made it, because when the Grand Duke returns the next morning, he finds her cell empty. Uh-oh, those guards are in serious trouble. Immediately, the Duke orders his butler, Owen, to investigate the escape. But the clues are all laid out for them. The melted fork, the shackles, the open drain. They even managed to figure out how she got hold of the fork in the first place. Since the dining halls have metal detectors, she used a decoy spoon to trick the guards. And when the alarms went off, she gave them the spoon rather than the fork hidden under her clothes. After the whole story comes out, the Duke isn't angry. Actually, he's impressed. Well, that is, until he hears the news that she has stolen the Grand Duke's ring from the treasury. The ring contains a blue mineral known as elfair that symbolizes the imperial family's noble bloodline. It's basically his birthright and a personal treasure that proves his status. They're often imbued with magical properties and hid in surprising places, since they're almost as valuable as the imperial family members themselves. Oh wait, I get it. The reason the Viper locked herself up wasn't just for fun. The plan all along was to steal this ring. She knew its location and had to get caught in this prison to have a shot at it. Wow, she really has balls to steal, this girl. Unfortunately for her, the Grand Duke wasn't quite so stupid as she thought. Expecting an escape attempt, He had her bound with an enchantment between master and slave. Whenever the Duke activates it, the Viper will suffer greatly and instinctively return to her master. And if that sounds messed up, that's because it is. The poor Viper was planning to take the ring and flee to the Eisenbach Empire, using it to parade as the illegitimate child of the Hexen Empire and start a new life. She's just enjoying the taste of freedom when suddenly her heart begins to pound, and she falls to the ground in agony. Since she's familiar with poisons, the Viper immediately starts to analyze her symptoms, trying to figure out who managed to slip her a dose without her noticing. She crawls toward a pair of boots, and suddenly the pain stops. When she looks up, she finds Prince Charming himself, Rexid van Hessen, with the smuggest smile in the world on his face. She gives him the ring, but in a twist, he slips it back on her finger. He promises that if she fulfills her end of the deal to make him emperor, she can have anything she wants. And I mean, really, with an offer like that, what's a girl to do? She's obviously going to take the deal. And then, to make sure she doesn't run away again, he picks her up. Like, literally just lifts and carries her away. Well, I guess that's one situation she can't wriggle out of. He slings her in a carriage headed for the Imperial Palace, all the while keeping a close eye on the Viper. As his butler warned him, he must never trust a word she says. Never get too comfortable around her. Which sounds cold, but she's kind of proven it already. He asks for her real name, since no amount of investigation can turn up any facts about her origin. But the truth is a little sadder than he's expecting. It's not like she's just hidden it really well. She actually wasn't ever given one. No parents to look after her, no one to register her birth, and so naturally, no name. With a cheeky smile, she offers to let the Grand Duke choose one for her, if he wants. A little flustered, Rexid ducks the question. Seeing she's made him uncomfortable, she moves on to an even more awkward topic, the question of how he managed to poison her. The Duke could easily tell her it was a spell, but he's actually kind of ashamed. So instead, he reaches over and says how surprising it is to find a genius con artist with such a beautiful face. Which seems kind of cute, until the Viper realizes he's actually trying to see if it's a mask. Wow, for a member of royalty, this guy really has no manners, huh? That's our Grand Duke for you. No manners, but lots of money. Before they get to the palace, he makes a detour to a dress shop to get his new criminal assistant some more appropriate clothing, and clears out the entire store. Pfft, show off? The Viper is overwhelmed with the number of luxurious gowns that all belong to her with the snap of his fingers. Rexid is surprised. Given how many famous heists she's pulled off, he thought she would have more than one of these fancy dresses. But despite being a scammer, the faceless criminal isn't quite so materialistic as you might expect. She actually spent a lot of her money on raising orphans in the alleys and paying for their medicine. So luxury like this is still new and exciting to her. That's kind of touching. And the Duke seems to think so too. From now on, he says he'll buy everything she wants. Ugh, where can I find a man like this? Is anyone else kind of falling for this big dumb bozo? Taking him at his word, the Viper picks a pretty pink dress and vanishes into the changing rooms. The Duke sits and waits for her outside, but as the minutes tick on, he starts to get suspicious. After all, he just left the most famous con artist in the world alone with a helpless attendant. He really is a bozo. Rexid rushes into the changing room to find the attendant wrapped up in lace and with a knife pointed at her throat. The Viper, of course, is nowhere to be found. The terrified attendant reveals that she took the dress and ran off to the nearest shopping street. Although, I guess she could be anywhere by now. Her nickname is literally the Viper after all. She's fast and she's venomous as heck. Speaking of venomous, the Duke is quick to activate the enchantment on his wrist. Meanwhile, his little snake is out running through the streets, and she's wandered into some dodgy neighborhoods. Which seems like kind of a stupid move if you ask me. I mean, what happens if she faints somewhere like this? The same thought is on the Viper's mind, so she moves quickly through the streets. It's not long before her path is blocked by a large, intimidating man the size of a house. He likes the look of her, and lunges after her ring. No stranger to guys like this, the Viper dodges and grabs his hand, raising her knee to deliver a blow to his you-know-what. But just before she can make contact, the poison kicks in and she drops to the ground. Now the penny finally drops. She realizes this must be a spell, since this time there isn't as much pain, just paralysis. And just like last time, she starts to crawl instinctively down the street. The thug finds this very funny. He thinks she's taken some kind of drugs and grabs her to see if she's still got any. Just before he can start feeling her up, he jerks backward, blood spraying from his mouth. Looks like Prince Charming showed up just in time. After yelling at the Viper, he grabs the thug by the head and lifts him into the air. Okay, whoa! I didn't realize this guy was that strong. Maybe she should just give in and stick by his side if this is what he's capable of. The thug reaches out, but Rexid catches his hand right away, and well, now there's even more blood. He reminds the Viper what he said about not losing that ring, which sounds 20 times scarier when he's still holding a man in the air. As if he was no more than a sack of potatoes, he drops the thug to the ground. By now, the spell is clear to both of them, and the Viper knows there's no point running away again, especially when she's wearing his precious ring. Furious, Rexid picks her up and swings her over his shoulder, fireman style, and says he won't let her feet touch the ground until the moment they reach his castle. I mean, can you blame him? It seems like the only way to ensure she isn't running away is to hold her the entire time. But I wouldn't be complaining if I was her, especially when he shuts her up with a warning to be a good girl, or else. And he sticks to his word. Owen the butler is there at the doors to greet them when they walk in, with the Viper still slung over his shoulder. He only puts her down once they're in the hall, allowing Owen to welcome her formally to the castle of the Grand Duke. He introduces himself and hands her a very thick contract. Butler Owen is in charge of just about everything in this castle, so obviously he knows the ins and outs of their arrangement too. Being as smart as she is, the Viper immediately realizes he must have been the one to have thought of putting her under a spell. She asks him for a way to break it, and Owen tells her straight up there isn't one. It's ancient magic binding a master and slave. It only ends when one of them dies. Well, that's hardcore. The first thing the Viper thinks is that she'll have to kill Rexid, but the butler is one step ahead of her. It's not that simple. If the master dies first, the blood in the slave's body will freeze and the slave will die too. Not only is that hella metal, but it also looks like the Duke didn't know about it. He grabs Owen by the collar and starts yelling at him. He's mad that Owen didn't tell him all the details, but as his butler rightfully points out, Rexid never would have agreed if he had, and this is pretty much the only way to keep her in line. Owen catches the Viper watching them and tells her the Earl Leshugi committed suicide after blowing all his money on her. 2 other barons believed her scams and lost all their money, having to give up their title and become slaves to work off the debt. Of course, all these people were doing pretty illegal things. That's why the Viper chose them, but it doesn't make the scam any less vicious. The point is, she's dangerous, and they have to resort to extreme measures to keep a hold of her. At least in this deal, the Duke and the castle staff will respect her as a business partner and treat her like a person rather than a criminal, which is all well and good, until you remember the whole "till death do us part" pact. That bit is pretty inhumane. So the Viper doesn't have much choice but to sign the contract. She does, however, have one condition. If the Viper becomes useless or he no longer needs her help, then he must cancel the contract and the enchantment with it. With that agreed, she signs the contract. Rexid walks her down to the castle treasury, where it takes her all of 2 minutes to amass a small fortune hidden in her dress. It's alright though. Rexid did say she could take what she wanted after all. Once again, the Grand Duke is more impressed than insulted. He doesn't seem to care much about the money or the wealth attached to his name. He just wants the title of Emperor, and that's it. He takes her over to a rune circle and places the contract in the middle. Apparently, they need to fill the drain with their blood to seal the deal. Which is kind of gross, but at this point, I expect no less from the Black Wolf of the battlefield. It seems like an appropriate time for the Viper to bring up his reputation, so she does. He's supposed to be a fearsome warrior, but he's already hesitating over drawing blood from her. The Viper reminds him that should he become emperor, he can never let his enemies see any sign of weakness. As if to prove himself, Rexid grabs the knife and slashes along his arm, filling up most of the drain by himself. From his con artist, he takes no more than a finger prick of blood. And with that, the contract is binding. Their lives are entwined forever, so Rexid asks her not to lie to him from now on. Yeah, like that's gonna happen. The Viper does give him one concession though. After all, he was right about the mask. At least, half right anyway. Because her real hair is pink and short. If you ask me, she looks cuter this way. She says this is her real face and she hasn't ever shown it to anyone. But at this point, who's gonna believe her? Especially when the next thing she does is take out her contacts. After their contract is signed and all the masks are off, the Duke escorts her to a beautiful big bedroom, which she has all to herself. Soon, a pair of staff come in, named Marco and Masha, who confuse her for a potential marriage suitor. They bring in some dinner, at which point the Duke picks a name and introduces her as Rosica. Good choice. It definitely suits her. Masha and Marco, who are actually mother and son and have known the Duke since he was born, seem to like Madame Rosica quite a lot, and gossip away as they bring in dishes. They mention someone named Raven, a member of the royalty who was around the same age as Rexid and used to spend a lot of time with him as a kid. I guess that must be the Crown Prince, the first in line for the throne, and the first one the Duke will have to dispose of if he wants to reach the Emperor's throne. After dinner is done, Rosica asks him about them, the members of his family that he will have to get rid of. She's already planning the best way to take care of the Crown Prince when Rexid shows her into a cold room and pulls the cover of a coffin to reveal, yep, that's right, the Crown Prince is already dead. Though you and I would probably suspect Rexid right away, Rosica is a professional. She quickly realizes two things. One, that the Duke did not kill his childhood best friend, the Crown Prince. And two, that he doesn't actually want to become emperor. He wants revenge. Honestly, I have no idea how she figured all that out. But Rexid seems surprised and doesn't contradict her. Rosica believes that someone must be trying to frame the Duke for the murder, which means her first task is to clear his name by finding the real murderer. After all, if the Duke is beheaded for treason, then Rosica dies too. Luckily for him, it's in her best interest to keep him alive. That night, Rosica is sneaking out of her room when she is grabbed by Owen, who immediately presses a knife to her throat. I guess that's the downside of being so good with disguises. People won't recognize you when you take the mask off. Rexid comes out just in time to shove him off. Once the lights are on and the air is cleared, Owen apologizes. Apparently, he used to be in a class for assassins, which explains his quick reflexes and slightly sinister motives. He also seems curious about whether this is her real face or not, and is just reaching to check for a mask when Rexid stops him and confirms her identity. This guy really is too gullible. Like, how does he know that? She could be an old man with a crooked spine for all we know. But there's another reason why the Duke seems to have softened. When Owen put a knife to her neck, he noticed an expression he's seen before. That's not the face someone makes when they're confused and scared. According to the seasoned warrior, that's a face by someone who has seen death and nearly died themselves. Little does he know how close he is to the truth. After all, Rosica did die once before being reborn in this world as the criminal we know today. She heads off to deal with her injury while Rex reminisces on his last memories of Raven, the Crown Prince. He was a cheerful guy, but he lived in fear, always worried about assassination attempts and wishing he could be a normal person without the stress of royalty. Turns out, he was right to be afraid, considering what happened to him. The next morning, Rosica bursts into the breakfast room in a cheerful mood, surprising Owen, who still thinks of her as a cutthroat scammer, the Viper. No sooner has she sat down than Rosica is demanding changes already. Although the castle has been manned by only 4 people in the past, she now wants 50 servants, a mix of professionals and low-ranking nobles. She also wants a title herself. Owen thinks this is all ridiculous, but Rexid agrees to everything, trusting that it's all for a good reason. The butler is heavily suspicious, and after he asks a ton of irritating questions, Rosica invites him to her room so they can talk in private and clear the air. But instead of giving him a chance to voice his suspicions, she asks him some very personal questions about his height and weight instead. She tells him he could stand to lose about 3 kilograms, which, Rosica, babe, none of your business, sweetie. But of course, as always with the Viper, these questions have a purpose even if we don't know it just yet. Meanwhile, Rex has been reading over Raven's old letters, trying to find an answer to his sudden death. The letters contain all the heartache and grief of someone struggling, and it's obviously very heartbreaking for the Duke to read them. But behind one of the more upsetting letters, he finds a note he hadn't seen before. A note acknowledging his death and apologizing for leaving Rex all alone. Wait. Does this mean that he took his own life? Oh, that's so sad. The pressure of the imperial family got to him in the end. Rex is shaking as he reads it. That's how Rosica finds him when she walks in. He looks more vulnerable than we've ever seen him, and when she gets close enough, he grabs her for support. Just after, Owen walks in wearing a mask to make him look just like the deceased Crown Prince. I'm not sure how he could be so easily fooled, but the poor Duke is emotional, and so he doesn't question it. He just walks straight over and pulls the boy he thinks is Raven in for a hug. Feeling guilty, Rosica has to intervene. She pulls them apart as Owen pulls the mask off. Even worse, the note was written by Rosica too. It's not real. None of it is. Wow, this is devastating. Imagine thinking you'd found a goodbye letter from your dearest friend only to discover it had all been fabricated? I guess that's what you get for hiring a scammer as your tactician. The poor Duke drops the note and starts to laugh, which is deeply concerning. That night, he spends most of the evening by himself, smoking a cigarette in the gardens, while Owen and Rosa watch him from the balcony. When he asks her about the letter, she admits she just wanted to see if she could copy the handwriting. Turns out, she was far better than she thought, and the whole thing went too far. Owen opens up about Raven's death, spilling some key details to Rosa. The two were close as children and remain close as well into their adulthood. Even though the Duke was posted out in the remote and harsh Drax territory, the Crown Prince continued to visit frequently. In fact, he was on his way to the Duke's castle when he was killed. That's how they know someone was trying to frame him. It's obvious that whoever killed Raven is out to ruin Rexid's reputation too. Obviously, after hearing all of this, Rosa feels incredibly guilty about the whole suicide note thing. Who wouldn't? She made him so stressed that he literally started smoking again. She ventures out to the gardens to make a proper apology. He doesn't seem interested in talking about Raven. Actually, he's just worried that she's standing outside in a thin dress. He throws her his jacket and tells her not to feel so bad. In fact, out of everyone who ever met him, Rosa seemed to know him best. Her letter was so impressive, so convincing that it brought him to tears. So either she really is as good a scammer as her reputation, or she's actually more sympathetic than she lets on. I reckon the truth is probably both. In a rare moment of pity, Rosa asks the Duke what his old friend was like. Despite being fearsome and vicious, and so far pretty mean too, we get to see the soft side of Rex while he talks about his precious friend. He always felt Raven was too gentle for the royal family, too sweet to survive in a world like this. But he was also kind, knowing that Rex had no one to call mother or father. Raven stopped calling his parents that so as not to make him jealous. He always stood by the Duke, even when he was getting punished and it wasn't his fault. While saying all of this, the Duke starts to cry. He gets embarrassed easily, but Rosa doesn't seem to mind. In fact, she uses his jacket sleeves to wipe his tears, which is so insanely adorable. She tells him that someone like Raven would have wanted nothing more than for the Duke to live happily, and asks what she can do to help. Whether it's revenge, becoming the Emperor, whatever it is, she'll do it. Wow, who knew someone known as the Faceless Criminal could have a heart too? Is it just me, or are these two really cute together? The next day, Rex rewards her kindness in the most extra way possible. She asked for a title, so he's awarded her the name of Princess. How's that for a thank you? Being Princess means she has the right to inherit the throne of the Grand Duke's house. And if you're thinking, hey, wouldn't she have to be related to him to be a princess? Well, you're right. But Rex is a Grand Duke, and he can do whatever he wants. Rosa immediately refuses, but once Owen explains, it starts to sound more reasonable. To give her a random title would look suspicious, but since everyone knows he has no interest in marriage, it makes more sense for him to choose an heir and successor from someone close to him. Like this, the Viper won't attract the attention of the imperial family, but she will have more power, so actually, it's pretty clever. And Rex even promises to set her free and relinquish the position once their contract is done. So with the terms all explained, Rosa signs the contract and immediately starts calling Rex Daddy. Right. Well, that's a slightly unfortunate side effect. But at least she's a princess. Now, the next step is to inform the nobles of the north that they have a new princess. That will mean inviting them all to the Drax castle to meet Rosa for themselves. In preparation for their arrival, the Viper begins to interrogate Rex on why he is so opposed to marriage. If you've ever read a manhwa before or any kind of romance fic, you'd know that no one is ever just opposed to marriage. There's always a reason, or better yet, a broken heart. And the Faceless Criminal seems to have sniffed his out right away. She's been suspicious of the name he gave her, since it just came out so naturally. In a moment of silence, she corners him and asks who is Rosa. The Duke insists that he doesn't have a secret lover, or a past affair or anything like that. It's just that one day, he wants to name a daughter Rosa. Yeah, right. And how does he plan to have a daughter if he never wants to marry? I don't think this guy has thought this one through. As part of her introduction ceremony, Rosa wants to invite the king and his concubines from the Emirate of Levita, a border kingdom that has wanted to invade the empire for quite some time. The only reason they haven't managed it so far is that big hunk of muscle right there, stationed at the snowy northern border. Now that the preparations are fully underway, all those extra servants are being put to use, and the castle is bustling with activity. Rex already seems stressed, and he only gets angrier once his princess begins his etiquette training. You would think the man third in line to the throne would have been taught decent manners, but from what we've seen so far, I think it's fair to say politeness isn't his forte. Rosa makes him read some compliments for practice, but coming from him, they sound more threatening than sweet. He has caught on to one thing, though. This is not just etiquette training. The Viper is preparing him to flirt with the Princess Levita, no less. Her plan is to take the Emirate of Levita, capturing their side to take the throne. And the first part of that is marrying their princess. Looks like all that questioning was really just part of her plan. She really is one sneaky snake. Despite his protests, Rosa assures him this is a necessary evil, and the only way to put him on the throne. He's still not happy about it, but Rex doesn't complain again, and soon the day comes for the royal family of Levita to arrive. His tactician asks him to practice the pickup lines one more time, and to her utter shock, this time he gets it. Actually, he's so good that the both of them just sort of stand there blushing for a minute. He made the most famous con artist in the world totally speechless. Now that's some serious riz. A little embarrassed, the two head over to meet the Levita delegation, who have arrived 2 days ahead of their nobles to allow the princess and the duke a chance to get to know one another. The king of Levita introduces himself first, and boy does he look scary. I hope Rexid treats his daughter right, otherwise there'll be some serious consequences. Rosa is next to introduce herself and makes a very good impression. So good, in fact, that the king brings lots of presents and goods to celebrate her position as princess. As usual, she is good at spinning lots of white lies to make the duke look like a good neighbor. But then the princess of Levita comes forward and, well, let's just say she's intimidating as heck. Tall with silver hair and red eyes, she immediately comes off as very cool. And just like the rest of her family, she warms to Rosa immediately. Just more proof that she's so good at her damn job. She chose her words very carefully, took a different angle for every royal member that she approached. Meanwhile, Rex is over there sulking like an overgrown puppy. Unfortunately, there's one member of the Levita family who isn't so easily swayed. The first heir to the Emirate of Levita, Prince Harom. He looks far meaner and less civilized than his other family members. He takes an interest in Rosa, reaching for her just in time for Rex to shove himself in the way. Well, ladies, now we know he's the protective type. Immediately, the air changes. The Duke sternly tells his guest to speak politely to his princess, and Harom soon apologizes. He actually seems to like Rex. I guess one bloodthirsty warrior knows how to speak to another bloodthirsty warrior, though this guy is a little overkill. While he's reveling in the memories of skinning rioters, his sister, the princess, quickly grabs Harom back and apologizes on his behalf. When they get back inside the palace and the royal family are sent to rest, Rex tries to correct what the Levita prince said before. He may have helped suppress the rioters, but he never had anything to do with skinning prisoners. The Viper didn't question it. I'm sure she's seen way worse things in her lifetime. But clearly, the Duke didn't want her to think he was such a cruel commander. Aside from his own concerns, Harom's outburst did reveal something important. Based on the king and the princess's reactions, they can tell that the Levita family is very concerned about being seen as barbarians. Despite their humble roots, he wants their lineage to be more like the noble royalty of the empire. In fact, he's so desperate to protect that image that he's actually killed his children in the past when they were too barbaric. Which is totally insane. How can anyone kill their own kids, no matter what they did? Rosa takes all of this into account, but it doesn't change the current plan. So she shoves Rex away and demands he asks the princess for a walk. He didn't make the best first impression upon arrival. That boy has got some schmoozing to do. While the two are getting better acquainted, Owen and Rosa hide in the bushes like kids to see how it's going. Despite all his oddities and quirks, Rex actually seems to be doing well. And for some reason, that doesn't bring a smile to Rosa's face. I mean, I think we all know the reason. Part of Rex's success is due to the present he gave to the princess, a beautiful necklace which used to be the national treasure of Levita and was given to the Duke as a trophy after the recent rebel lockdown. He decided to give it back to her, but he kind of flubs the delivery. Instead of fitting it around her neck, he kind of just throws it at her. Nice one, Rex. Real smooth. Next, he tries one of the pickup lines they practiced, but it all goes horribly wrong. Instead of giving the punchline, he just insults her father, the literal king of the country he's attempting ally with. Did anyone teach this kid diplomacy when he was younger? He really is the embarrassment of the empire. Later, he insults her again at lunch, commenting on how much she's eaten and acting like she's going to get indigestion. Really, this guy is hopeless. That means it's time for Rosa to come in and fix all his mistakes. While the princess is teaching her how to shoot, she takes the opportunity to ask whether her and her brother get along. The answer is no, like really know. The princess sees Prince Haram as responsible for the rebel uprising since he has such a terrible reputation with their subjects. Rosa slyly suggests she should be queen instead and goes on a whole speech about how heirs who aren't worthy of the throne should be eliminated. It's kind of obvious what she's aiming for, but the princess takes it to heart nonetheless. Now that she's planted the seed, all that remains is to make her brother trip up and cause the king to turn against him. It looks like Haram is already working on that for her. While Rosa is walking the halls, a teary-eyed maid comes running out with the prince on her tail. Clearly something has happened, but the maid, whose name is Layla, refuses to tell. Rosa sends her away and drops the mask, being honest about how much she dislikes Haram. She's about as rude as she can be, and even gives him a light slap across the cheek. That's when Haram flies into a rage, lifting a hand to strike her back. As usual, Rex is just in time to block the hit. Always the knight in shining armor. Although this time, Rosa's plan would have worked better if she actually had got hit. Rex is cold and cruel. He doesn't seem to care one bit about maintaining diplomatic relations, and even tells Rosa to hit him back if she fancies it. When she lets slip about what happened to Layla, that's when he really starts to see red. Rex hits him hard across the face, and his mouth starts bleeding like crazy. And what's worse is he pulls out a knife next, threatening to rip Haram apart. Uh-oh. Now I'm really not so sure this is going according to plan. Rosa steps in between them, trying to convince the Duke to calm down. They're still acting pretty violent, so the only thing she can do is to start talking about his little friend, if you catch my drift. She starts insinuating that it's so small it won't work properly, and then goes as far as saying he must be a eunuch. In a very weird play, she offers Haram a bet. If he does actually have all the working parts down below, then he can have the title of Duchess of Drax. At least, that's her offer. Then it all goes to pieces when Rex intervenes, grabbing the imperial ring and using it to cast a spell. It turns out the ring has a hidden property. It can record situations so that anything said or done can be replayed at a later date. It also records oaths and delivers them to the Guardian Sanctuary, so anything sent in there is kind of a big deal. For the sake of his pride, he repeats what has happened to the ring, while Rosa buries her face in her hands. Does he have to be so friggin' noble all the time? Come on, Rex, now is not the moment to show off. The deal is set. If the prince is not a eunuch, then Rex will kneel before him and renounce his title. And because he said it to the damned ring, he can't go back on his word now. If he does, he can never be in line for the throne of emperor. Once the prince has walked off laughing, Rosa scolds him. The Duke only did it because he was trying to follow her lead, but now they have an impossible situation on their hands. They need to find a way, and I can't believe I'm actually saying this, they need to find a way to make Prince Haram lose his manhood in the next 2 days. It sounds insane, because it is. Obviously, word of this crazy bet reaches back to the ears of the Emperor Robert Van Hessen, who is not pleased to hear what his younger brother has been up to. While he and his inner circle are meeting to discuss the Duke's actions, they've received a letter from Raven, the Crown Prince. As we know, the Crown Prince is very much deceased, so this must be the forgery that Rosa made. Well, if it's good enough to fool his family, then she must be pretty damn talented. The letter requests some manpower, something about delivering gifts back to the Imperial Palace after his trip to the Drax estate. Second in line to the throne, Ride Van Hessen decides to accompany the party himself. Looks like it's time for a brotherly reunion, though I have a feeling that will only end in tears. After the letter arrives, a suspicious figure in a mask and robe visits a blonde boy with one red eye and a scar over his face. Now, I don't think it takes a genius to work out that this kid is clearly a bad guy. Add to that he's playing with a Rubik's Cube, which is like the classic evil genius stereotype. But also, hang on, how did a medieval magical universe end up with Rubik's Cubes? Anyway, the person in the mask reports that the Crown Prince is not dead, something that Rubik's Cube Boy was clearly hired to ensure. Both of them seem confused by this sudden turn of events. In fact, the blonde boy is so angry that he tells the masked man to get out. He says he has a sudden urge to kill someone. Jeez, talk about anger issues. The blonde assassin decides to go up and check, and if he finds the Crown Prince alive, he swears to take care of it himself this time. Meanwhile, back at the Grand Duke's palace, guess who else has a Rubik's Cube and is playing with it right now? The Viper. It turns out they don't exist in this world, so she made one herself when she was a kid. Now, doesn't that seem suspicious? I'm sure there's a connection between Rosa and that evil blonde kid. It can't be a coincidence. She explains the concept to Rex and shows him how to solve it, leaning very closely to him while she does. The poor baby Duke gets quickly flustered and his face goes red. So he suddenly changes the topic and asks why she became a scammer. Oh, Rex, you couldn't be more obvious if you tried. But he points out that she's clever enough to make money without using all these scams and tricks. Rosa has never had a legal job, not in her past life or now, so who knows what could have happened if she'd taken a different path. It all started in middle school when she and a friend were being bullied by a group of girls. Her friend had a pet rabbit inside her locker and the bullies locked it inside. Worried her pet would suffocate, she begged for the key, only to have the girls refuse. Wow! That's truly horrible! If I were her, I would have thrown a punch at this point. Instead of letting her friend be humiliated, Rosa stepped up and offered to open the locker. Using just a hairpin, she managed to pick the lock and free the bunny, who was perfectly safe. Of course, for her moment of heroism, there had to be repercussions. The bully was furious about being shown up, so she told their teacher that Rosa was a class thief. And since everyone saw her just pick a lock, well, it was hard to disprove. Even though she was innocent, Rosa's mother had come to the school and apologized, handing back over 2 million won worth of school fees that their thief had supposedly stolen. After hearing all of this, Rex is mad as heck on her behalf, which is kind of cute. But that's how Rosa ended up being a scammer. Once everyone already sees you as a thief, I guess there's no incentive to be a good girl anymore. She got her revenge too, stealing a load of stuff from classmates and teachers and framing the bully for it. She was sent to a disciplinary meeting where the whole truth came out. Rosa and her mother's names were cleared, and the Viper had already been born. Rex is pretty impressed by this story and suddenly gets a little sentimental. Even though it makes him a fool, he says he'll always believe her. After all, no one in the world would trust the famous Viper. So wouldn't it be nice to have one person who was always unconditionally on her side? He also says that after this whole contract is up, he wants her to have a comfortable life where she can stay by his side forever. Whoa! Where has he been hiding all this charm? I'm getting a little flustered myself. The next day, Rosa gets a visit from the King of Levita. He wants to hear what really went down between the Grand Duke and the Prince, so she tells him the truth. Well, basically the truth. There's a lot of spinning the story in her favor, and she makes the Prince look like a real douche. But then again, he is a real douche, so I guess it's not that far from reality. Her little trick works well. The king seems very disappointed in his son and even threatens to kill him if he doesn't act more dignified when the other nobles arrive tomorrow. Though that doesn't look likely. The first thing Jerome does the next day is kick down his bedroom door, nearly crushing Owen on his way to stop Rosa from telling anyone about what he tried to do to their maid. Meanwhile, Rex is following his own meticulous instructions and keeping the king occupied. They're also talking about the incident with the prince, slowly grinding down the father to be more and more angry at his son. At just the right time, they stumble upon a table in the garden where Rosa is entertaining the other noble ladies. And guess who has walked out with his pants around his ankles at that very moment? Another Viper plan executed to perfection. What happened was, after Owen riled up Jerome, he came charging out into the gardens just in time to hear Rosa making a joke about the Grand Duke being impotent. Thinking they were all talking about him, he started yelling at her and pulled down his pants in front of everyone to prove that he had, you know, all the right equipment. This dude is completely nuts. Even if they were insulting him, why would you ever get your gear out in public just to prove a point? If this were the real world, he would have been arrested by now. At just the same time, Rex arrives with his father, who is so angry that he orders the guards to arrest him right away. Scrambling and scared, he brings up the bet. After all, his little man was out for everyone to see, so they've proven he's not a eunuch. But Rosa points out that 2 days haven't passed yet. They still have 8 hours before the time is up. And after a disgrace such as this, it doesn't look like Jerome is going to make it that long. At least, part of him won't, if you catch my drift. Damn, the Viper is really ruthless. I mean, that guy sucks, but does he deserve to have his you-know-what cut off? Regardless of the moral concerns, Rosa's plans have all succeeded. Now it looks like the position of heir will be handed over to the princess, and the Viper has earned the sympathy of all the noble ladies who saw what happened. A double win, really. So now the Levita issue is out of the way, the next task is to get better acquainted with the northern nobles who have arrived at the Grand Duke's palace. She heads to Rex's room with a list of names for him to memorize, but when she knocks, there's no answer. Assuming he's asleep, she gets all worked up about the fact that she's been slaving away while he gets to take naps. So she barges in without waiting for an answer and, well, you can probably guess what happens next. Fresh from a shower, covered in scars and abs without a towel in sight, Rex seems surprisingly calm, until her eyes wander lower, that is. For a manhwa about princesses, there is sure a lot of naked men in this series. But you won't hear me complaining. I mean, look at that guy. Even when he's trying to cover himself up, he's hot as heck. Of course, Rosa rushes out of the room immediately, blushing bright red. She apologizes through the door, but she just can't get the image out of her head. Yeah, neither can we, bestie. Especially since she basically just proved that the rumors about him not having a working you-know-what are untrue. Very, very untrue. Once he's dressed, she slips back inside to find him sulking. He's holding his ear and suddenly reveals that he can't hear her speaking. Turns out, this is a castle-wide phenomenon. All throughout the evening, several of the nobles staying with them have been experiencing temporary deafness. All of them are heads of the important families, which makes it easier to track down the problem. The Grand Duke and the heads of 8 families were together at tea time that afternoon. Lucky for them, they've got the Viper, master of all poisons, on their side. Given the symptoms, she determines the poison to be Claris, a weed only found on the black market. Owen prepared the tea himself, but they used a blend brought by Baron Elgar as a gift. After he gives her a chance to inspect the tea, Rosa realizes the situation is far more serious than she realized. Because there was another herb in there, one that dissolves the eardrum less than 24 hours after intake. That gives them 18 hours to make an antidote and find the culprit. The Baron is a low-ranking aristocrat from the outskirts of the territory, so it's possible that he brought the tea because he was manipulated by someone pulling the strings. Rosa quickly gets angry with herself for missing the signs and not suspecting something sooner. While making the antidote, she starts slamming the tools and is about to do herself some harm when Rex catches her hand. He promises that he's fine and wipes her tears away like a real Prince Charming. Suddenly, coming back to herself, Rosa apologizes for her outburst and gets back to work. Quiet and steadfast by her side, Rex assures her there's no need to apologize and none of this is her fault. And it really isn't. She's the mastermind behind this whole operation, working all day and night to get this guy on the throne. She can't catch everything. Because they're short on time, Rosa has to replace one of the key ingredients for the antidote with her saliva. I'm not totally sold on the science behind it, but she says it will do the job. Writing all of this on a notepad so that Rex can read it, she tells him the quickest way to administer the antidote is like this. She grabs a handful of his collar and tells him to open his mouth. The poor little Duke is shaking, but she approaches him slowly and ever so gently gives him a kiss. Ah! It's happening, people! Everyone stay calm. At first, it seems like all those stories about Rex not knowing how to act around women might be true. He's a little awkward, and Rosa can tell he's nervous. But then he gets a boost of confidence and suddenly grabs her, pulling her into him like something out of a romance novel. Finally! I mean, it's not often that a girl gets to see the guy totally nude before they've even kissed. I feel like this was bound to happen sometime soon. Rosa pulls away and tucks him in bed, telling him the antidote will take effect in a couple of hours and that he should get some sleep. When she tries to walk away, he grabs her and frantically waves his hands around, asking if she's going to give everyone the antidote the way she gave it to him. Of course, the answer is no. The others will have to drink it with tea. Although they will still get her saliva, which is super gross if you ask me. Once she's gone, the Duke is lying in bed, totally unable to fall asleep. It was a kiss, all right, but since it was for medicinal purposes, he's wondering if it really meant anything. Dude, were you there? Of course it meant something. That wasn't just swapping saliva back there, that was a whole damn embrace. Honestly, sometimes this guy can be so thick. Meanwhile, Rosa and Owen have passed out the antidotes and calmed down the angry nobles, who have all returned to health. But they can't just let this go. There will have to be an investigation. And it only gets more complicated because Baron Elgar didn't even know there was a problem with the tea. So clearly, this comes from higher up. Maybe even the same people who are trying to frame Rex for the murder of the Crown Prince? By now, they can assume their letter has reached the imperial family. So whoever has orchestrated this whole mess is doing so on purpose. Maybe even as a counterstrike. It's all very complicated, and honestly, I don't have a clue what's going on. But whoever it is has no idea that Rosa is on the other end, and they've just made her mad as heck. Before bed, she pops over to check in on Rex, who is still a little flustered every time she walks in. To avoid mishaps like today, she's brought him a bit of poison, which he will need to ingest every day to develop immunity to poison. She seems to be completely ignoring what happened between them earlier, but Rex isn't so smooth. In fact, he quietly asks if he can ingest the poison the same way they did earlier. The little scoundrel! After a little chuckle, Rosa agrees. He needs to take 1 dose per day to start with, and eventually that will increase over time. So the sweet little Duke sits down and gets himself emotionally prepared for another smooch. Only for his tactician to tell him they'll start tomorrow. So he wanders off to bed all shy, which is somehow even more adorable. The next day, they confront the Baron about the tea he brought. It's clear he had no idea about the contents, but they need to know his supplier, and they need to know ASAP. The young son steps up and tries to protect his father, confessing that he bought the tea himself because they couldn't afford expensive gifts like the other nobles. It was offered to him by a boy who came to their estate recently, someone named Hel, who was hired as a servant for the son. In fact, the servant accompanied them to this very castle. But since his father recovered from the poison, no one has seen him. Well, isn't that just the most suspicious thing you've ever heard? Rosa and Owen think so too, so they sprint off to go and find the little rat. The two of them put on a little bet to see who can find a Hel first, and Rosa goes all out, even changing into a latex catsuit, which seems a little extra if you ask me. When was latex even invented? You know what? Never mind. Now geared up and certainly looking the part, the Viper can do what she does best. Act like a criminal, only this time, she's catching them for once. Meanwhile, the kid they're looking for is cowering in a spot in the dungeons. He was given the tea by some fat noble who wanted it to go straight to Rex. He seems terrified, as anyone in his position would be. If he doesn't escape, he's done for. That much is certain. It seems little Hel has had a difficult life. When he was only young, he and his sister got arrested for thievery. Apparently, there was no loyalty between them, as his older sister was tired of him, telling him to fend for himself and find a way out on his own. Though she gave him directions, it seemed like she was a much more successful street thief than he was ever going to be. And the proof is in the pudding. All these years later, he's stuck in the same position. He made a stupid decision, trusted the wrong people, and wound up trapped. It takes literally minutes for Rosa to find him, only seconds before Owen. The poor kid is shaking with fear and only gets more antsy when they take him to an interrogation room for the Duke to question. With Owen holding a knife to his neck and Rex doing his usual terrifying commander thing, the truth soon comes out. He was offered $10 million to hand over the tea by a guild leader, who gives him quests like this from time to time. But Hel insists that he has no idea where the guild leader got the tea from or what the motivation was. He was even stupid enough to think that they were actually going to give him $10 million. So I have a feeling he's telling the truth. Some people are just that easily conned. The interrogation is interrupted when Rosa walks in, immediately demanding an update. The combination of Owen and the Viper discussing the best way to carve up a Hel sends the little kid into a panicked spiral, which you can hardly blame him for. She comes right up to him with a knife in hand. The poor guy probably thinks that's his last moment, but then suddenly, she rips a hole open in his back, exposing a huge scar right across his shoulders. Immediately, Rosa softens, reintroducing herself as the venomous Viper and acting all friendly. It turns out that Hel and her know each other from way back when they were both on the streets as kids. Hel was the younger brother of the chief of the beggar children, a terrifying kid named Tarantula, with the same blonde hair and red eyes. I think we can all put two and two together to figure out who this guy is. But the plot thickens. Apparently, Rosa always suspected that Tarantula was also someone with a past life, reborn with more knowledge than they knew what to do with. And plot twist number 2 is that the older sister figure that Hel remembered getting ditched by was actually Rosa. Good to know she's always been this cold-hearted. After they were locked up, she did help him find the way out, but he stepped in a bear trap and got a permanent injury. After that, Rosa watched from the shadows while Knight slashed him across the back, threatening to kill the kid. Now, she might be a Viper, but she's not that evil. So Rosa threw a rock to trigger the magical traps, hoping to give him enough time to get away. Hearing Rosa narrating their first encounter, Hel quickly realizes that the woman in front of him is Viper's sister, making him question how Rosa changed her appearance. While the two are busy talking, Rexid butts in and reminds Rosa that they are still interrogating Hel. Thus, Ahel quickly denies and assures them that he doesn't know who the mastermind is, since he was only given the task. Listening to Ahel's explanation, Rosa talks to Rexid and comments that Ahel is undoubtedly telling the truth, and advises Rexid to take Ahel since he will be helpful to Rexid in the future, and also adds that she can vouch for how respectful and loyal Ahel is to the person who saved and spared his life, to which Ahel instantly agrees. Afterwards, Rosa and Rexid are in a meeting with the nobles who were poisoned, and explain to them that they only experience poison-like symptoms since one of the ingredients used in the tea is Claris, which is the problem. Rexid then apologizes to them, which shocked them as he rarely did so. Later that night, Rexid complains to Rosa if she needs to check on him while slowly unbuttoning his shirt. Rexid says that while trying to make himself look good. Sorry, boy, but you ain't fooling anybody. Next, Rosa hands Rexid the antidote, which he willingly accepts and drinks without question. Because of this behavior, Rosa lectures Rexid not to drink anything given to him easily until he gains immunity. Rexid then looks at her innocently and asks if what she gave him is poison, which Rosa quickly assures him is not. Thus, Rexid reminds her that he already believes it is her, hence, he will trust everything she hands him. Afterwards, Rosa is about to perform the last step of the antidote for Rexid, which is also to give him her saliva. And upon doing so, she is having a hard time to find a comfortable position. Thus, Rexid offers to let her sit on his lap, which Rosa tries to reject, but is taken by surprise when Rexid pulls her toward his lap, making her flustered. Composing herself, Rosa informs Rexid that she'll be going to do it, which Rexid also agrees to, while also calming himself when he sees that Rosa is about to kiss him. While kissing each other, Rexid starts to panic since he doesn't know where to place his hands appropriately, and begins to feel a little excited. Thus, after a few minutes, he quickly puts Rosa down and announces that he'll be staying in his room and will inform Rosa if he feels unwell, leaving her dumbfounded. Something is rising, but it's not justice. Upon arriving in his room, Rexid starts to lecture himself for feeling aroused by Rosa's actions, and starts to relieve himself, but is disturbed by Owen entering the room. The following morning, while Ahel is peacefully strolling in the garden, Rexid appears behind him, causing him to jump, but Ahel quickly regains his composure. Rexid then threatens Ahel, commenting that if he does something suspicious, he will surely kill him, making Ahel shiver. Thus, Ahel promises to Rexid that he will serve and be loyal to him. Afterwards, Rexid curiously asks Ahel about Rosa's childhood, which Ahel narrated. He had known Rosa as a normal child, but later, he was rumored by the whole empire to be a faceless scammer. Ahel continues by explaining how they later get separated when their syndicate sells them to a perverted nobleman, and how Rosa purposely gets caught in an attempt to rob the nobleman's castle. Ahel later turns to Rexid and teases him by commenting that Rosa is also a beautiful lady, and questions Rexid about his real relationship with Rosa, since he accepts her even after knowing her real identity. Rexid tries to reason it out, but later realizes that Ahel is trying to tease him. Thus, he tries to hit Ahel, but Ahel quickly dodges and runs away from Rexid. Next, Rexid sees Rosa and the princess talking. When the princess kisses Rosa's forehead, he quickly approaches them and snatches Rosa away, while reminding the princess that same-sex marriage is not legal. Someone's jealous. Before Rexid arrives, Rosa is about to send Prinia off. And before leaving, Prinia thanks Rosa for her help and for believing she'll be a great leader. As a symbol of her thanks, Prinia gifts Rosa a necklace made from the teeth of a frost boar that she had hunted when she was young. Rosa gladly accepts this and thanks Prinia. Prinia then hugs Rosa and kisses her forehead to bid her goodbye, but it's quickly interrupted by Rexid, who quickly pulls Rosa away from Prinia. Because of Rexid's childish action, Rosa can't help but facepalm herself, while quickly apologizing to Prinia for Rexid's action. Prinia only laughs at them and comments that the two look like a good pair. Rosa then looks at Rexid, but doesn't know if he seems upset or shy because of Prinia's statement. Hence, Rosa tries to clear the awkwardness and comments that Rexid is not her type of guy, and she only respects him as a Grand Duke. He is not shy or upset. He likes you. Afterwards, while they're in the room, Rosa starts to comment about Rexid being the first person to make her feel embarrassed, and she also questions him on why he constantly argues with Prinia, even though they had already rehearsed all the pickup lines that he was supposed to say to Prinia, but always fails to deliver them. Rexid then defends himself. He can say the lines directly to Rosa since he also sees stars in her eyes. Because of Rexid's statement, both quickly feel flustered but quickly calm themselves. Next, Rexid proceeds to drink the antidote and then curiously asks Rosa what type of man she is interested in. Rosa looks at Rexid questioningly, so he explains that he must help Rosa find a suitable man to marry, hence, he asks what her taste in men is. Rosa starts to enumerate the qualities that she likes, and adds that the most important for her is that the man should be rich. Hearing this, Rexid laughs and comments that it'll be hard to find her a decent man with no title who is rich. Hearing this comment, Rosa didn't mind this and swiftly grabbed Rexid and kissed him for the final step of the antidote, making Rexid surprised and flustered. After this, Rexid quickly composed himself and returned to their topic, advising her not to marry again as he rapidly walked away from her. Yeah, since you only want her to marry you, but you're still denying your feelings, Rexid! Later that night, Owen is watching Rexid, who is sick because Rexid didn't want him to call a doctor. However, as time passes, Owen notices that Rexid is experiencing excruciating pain, so he calls Rosa, who then arrives and starts to take care of him. While taking care of Rexid, Rosa hands him a Chinese herbal tea, but Rexid didn't mind this and instead pulled Rosa closer to him. Rexid starts to tell Rosa that it's hard to find a man like her type who is smart, so he asks her to scratch him off her list since he may not be smart enough, but he also tries hard. Hearing this, Rosa clarifies to Rexid if what he means is that he doesn't qualify as her type of man, since he might be handsome and rich, but he doesn't fit the image of a wise man. Rosa then confronts Rexid as he's beginning to like her, but then explains to him that he might be feeling those things since he has never met a woman so far. Listening to this, Rexid quickly denies Rosa's statement and assures her that he doesn't like her, while also pulling her in for a hug, but explains that even if he's doing this weird stuff, he still doesn't want her. Hearing this, Rosa then assures Rexid that she already knows this and explains that he might be hallucinating right now while pulling away. Afterwards, Rosa bumps into Owen, who is also about to check on Rexid. Owen then curiously asked about the process of increasing the body's immunity to poison and where the poison is. Rosa calmly explains that it comes from her saliva, and she transfers it by kissing Rexid. Rosa later notices Owen's silence, so she assures him that he knows her boundaries between Rexid and him and promises Owen to help find an empress who will fit Rexid. Oh, poor Rosa. The following morning, while Rexid is fussing about the cloth that Rosa made him wear, the guard informs him that someone outside the gates wants to see him and will only introduce itself to Rexid. Thus, Rexid instructs the guard to bring that person to him. Upon arriving, Rosa notices that it's a pregnant woman, while Rexid quickly approaches the woman and assists her inside with urgency, leaving Rosa behind. Inside Rexid's room, Marcia comforts Sena while she explains to Rexid her situation and how she escaped from harm. After hearing this, Rexid assures Sena that he's okay with her staying, but realizes that something is not right, as a trained assassin would not miss a pregnant woman. Thus, he thinks that they might have purposely missed Sena. Later, Rosa visits Rexid's room and is shocked to see Sena inside, but quickly calms herself as she approaches Sena. Rosa then introduces herself to Sena to make her feel comfortable, thinking to herself that Sena might be Rexid's lover, but Sena denies this. Hearing this, Rosa tries to confirm it again by commenting that she thought it was Rexid's baby and asking what Sena will name her baby. Sena then states that it'll be named Roan for a boy and Rosa if it's a girl. Rosa then recalls Rexid naming her Rosa, as he also wants to name his daughter the same. Please, don't jump to conclusions! Rosa begins to wonder why Rexid deceived her and led her to believe he had no past relationships. Meanwhile, Rexid walks in and looks at Rosa stressfully, but she quickly walks away from the room, leaving them behind. Rexid quickly follows Rosa as he wants to clarify the situation, but Rosa then assures him that she understands the problem and there's no need for an explanation. But Rexid tries to comment on the situation. Rosa then begins to conclude that he is the child's father, and thus she accuses him of leaving her in the dark, since everyone knows except her, and then falls to her knees. Rosa then weakly tells Rexid that she's disappointed with him and didn't imagine him to be irresponsible. Hearing this, Rexid realizes that Rosa thinks that it's his baby. Thus, he clarifies to her that Raven is the father of Sena's child, and they have been secretly together since they were children. Rosa then looks at Rexid and starts to feel relieved after learning this. Afterwards, Rexid carries her while informing her that he will take her to her room so they can talk. Thank God it was a misunderstanding! While walking towards the room, Rosa explains to Rexid that she thought he was the father of Sena's baby, because Sena had told her that she had also wanted to name her daughter Rosa, the same name Rexid had given her. Knowing this, Rexid starts to confess to Rosa that he got the name from Raven when they were still young, and since he doesn't know any pretty name for a girl, he uses the name that Raven wants to name his child. Seeing Rexid's guilty face, Rosa then assures him that it's fine, and also promises to keep Sena's stay a secret. Upon arriving in the room, Rosa apologizes to Rexid for the misunderstanding, and then happily announces that she will return to work. Later that night, Rosa is trying to dress Owen to look like Raven. Since she knows that Raven has a scar on his left shoulder, Rosa instructs Owen to take clothes so she can place that detail. Afterwards, Rosa shares with Owen that she too thinks someone is behind Sena, and also thinks it's not Rexid who's the real culprit, since he won't gain much from it. Instead, she states that the real culprit may stem from the lover's rank of succession rather than the predecessor. Hearing this, Owen realized that Rosa didn't only plan to clear Rexid of the accusation of being the Crown Prince's assassin. Rosa, you're a genius! The following day, the new publication owners excitedly welcome Rosian, since he knows it will give him an inside scoop on what's happening. True enough, Rosian hands them meaningful content, such as Rexid's meeting with Levita, along with supporting photos. And seeing this, the man thanks Rosian for the information. After sending the information, Rosian later sneaks inside a carriage and sees Rexid waiting for him. Rosian then takes his mask off to reveal his true self, who is Rosa. Next, Rosa asks for some magic scrolls. Thus, Rexid curiously asks what Rosa plans to do with them. She explains that it's not for her, but for Sena, and then starts to stress after thinking that Rexid might have sold or thrown out all of the scrolls. However, Rexid assures her that everything is in good hands and has one for each type. Hearing this, Rosa feels happy and starts to look at the window. At the same time, Rexid stares at her and thinks that she looks cute and happy. Rexid quickly stops himself after realizing that he's starting to praise Rosa's beauty. Boy, you're falling! Meanwhile, Rosa innocently asks Rexid if they can drop by to get some scrolls, which he coolly agrees to, making Rosa excited. Afterwards, Owen announces that they are already at the store, so Rexid instructs Rosa to wait for him, as he will only be buying the scroll, hence they don't need to go out together. After seeing that Rosa is about to protest, she says that she's worried that Rexid might get scammed. Upon arriving at the store, Rexid directly asks the owner for a magic scroll for teleportation. The owner then shows him their newest product according to the Eisen Kingdom's calendar. Rexid then looks at the scroll closely to check if it's genuine, and after verifying its authenticity, he asks how much it is. The owner excitedly tells Rexid that it costs 80 million Norts, making Rexid wonder why it's cheaper. The owner explains that the disadvantage of selling the scroll is finding a customer who also needs and is willing to pay for it. Hearing the explanation, Rexid feels convinced and decides to buy the scroll. However, Rosian appears beside him and asks as if he also wants to buy the scroll, bidding for it. While Rexid wants to object, Rosian continues and shows the owner a ruby ring, explaining that although he may not have the money, he has already stopped by the jewelry store next door, where the ring has been appraised. However, the store only wants to buy it for 100 million, which isn't the price he wants. Hearing this, the owner quickly sold the scroll to Rosian, assuring him that the ring was delicate as payment. She's scamming him! Later, Rosa hands Sena some jewelry on the scroll. Sena then thanks Rosa for all the gifts, even though she thinks it's too much, but Rosa assures her that she deserves them. Next, Rosa curiously asks Sena what Rexid's childhood looks like, to which Sena replies that Rexid has a pretty normal childhood. Still, one thing that stands out is when he's about to learn sex education, where he runs away while shouting at the teachers to leave. Even when the king tries to scold and convince him that he needs to learn such things, Rexid rejects this and says that he'll only learn those things from Marcia. Marcia later taught him that babies are made when parents pray hard, and a canary will deliver them, a belief he held for 14 years. What an innocent Rexid! Rexid then arrives at the room telling Rosa to return home, which she does. However, before leaving, she teases him about whether he already knows how babies are made, which annoys him. Afterwards, while Rosa and Ahel are playing chess, they also start to remember how Dokumi is good at it. In the middle of playing chess, Ahel notices something weird happening, so he panics and asks Rosa what is in the drink that he drank. Rosa smiles and explains to him that it's a new toxin she made called Don't Overeat, which narrows the blood vessels when he eats, but assures Ahel that he doesn't need to worry since she already has the antidote. It's her way of trusting Ahel while explaining that he doesn't need to worry much as long as Ahel consumes only the same amount of food. Later that night, Rexid visits Rosa's room and, concerned, asks her why her room is cold, noticing that it's only because she had opened the window. Afterwards, Rexid tells Rosa that he wants to continue boosting his immunity with poison and assures her that he has already recovered from being sick. Who's ever been so happy to poison themselves? Rosa then informed Rexid that she didn't need to kiss him since she realized blood and saliva have the same composition, but he quickly rejected this. Rosa explains that it needs to be done since in the future his wife might get jealous and even comment that she pities Rexid's future consort as well. Hearing this, Rexid gets an idea and informs Rosa that she'll be his consort and starts to plan the wedding. Rosa, shocked, looks at Rexid and starts to comment on how crazy his plan is, and even that he's only joking. But Rexid looks serious and tells her that even though he doesn't plan to marry yet, having her as a consort is not a big deal. Rexid proceeds to discuss calling the Emperor so that he can join the wedding, but Rosa quickly remarks that he can't marry whomever he wants, as he needs to ask permission from a few people. Hearing this, Rexid starts to think about the people he needs permission from, but then feels his brothers don't care about him. He also considers that even if the Emperor disagrees with his plan, he'll still do what he wants. Well, somebody is eager to marry Rosa. Rosa then reminds Rexid that his becoming the crown prince will be a different story, just like what happened with Raven and Sena, since being of noble blood is an essential symbol of the Empire, leaving Rexid speechless. Afterwards, Rexid's frustration with the cubes he is playing prompts him to recall the promise he made with Raven before he was killed, and he feels guilty since he couldn't save him. Later on, Rexid is surprised to see Raven standing in front of him alive, and he quickly hugs him while trying to stop shedding tears as he misses him so much, even though he knows this is only Owen imitating Raven. Rexid knows that this is Owen, but he's trying to comfort himself, but still can't stop his longing. Next, Rosa, Rexid, and Owen, in the form of Raven, visit Sena, who is shocked and glad to see Raven's face. Owen then starts his act and approaches Sena. He then apologized for leaving her for a long time, but Sena assured him that she was fine while still crying. Rexid then butts in and informs them that the royal family will be arriving soon, thus Raven excuses himself from Sena. Imagine that your spouse is already dead, but you didn't know! The captain of the Imperial Guard, Simon Cardell, greets Raven and Rexid with utmost respect and fealty. Rexid then apologizes for having brought all the soldiers to deliver the gifts, but Simon responds by saying that they're just doing their job. Shortly after, Rexid introduces Simon to Rosa, who is very pleased to meet the heiress. They then begin their journey, but before Owen departs, Rosa asks to speak to him in private to warn him. She tells him that he should be careful and not die, because there's no guarantee in his mission. He reassures her, saying that he will succeed, and if he doesn't, then he dies. But Rosa tells him that it's not that simple. Instead, he needs to be safe above all. She continues that those weren't exactly her words, but what Rexid told her. If he's going to be working with Rosa, then he should not take his life for granted. Though she initially thought the mission was more important than his life, upon careful thought about how Rexid might react, she cannot take that risk. So with that said, even if the mission is going to fail, he needs to come back to her no matter what. She then wishes him luck intimately, but emphasizes that by no means should he risk his life, because in the end, they're still going to succeed anyway. Later that day, Rosa enters Rexid's room to deliver a potion. After being granted permission, she approaches, little knowing that he's taking a bath. Seeing Rosa's visible embarrassment, Rexid teases her even more, saying it shouldn't matter because they're just his employees. Like Owen, who sees him half naked when they both take a bath. Annoyed by this absurd comparison, she's tempted to call him a brat, rather than use honorifics. She then hands over the vial and the documents, though she already warned him that later would be the best time. Since he insists, he has to begrudgingly hear her discuss the candidates for his soon-to-be wife. She continues by saying that he should start acting more bashful rather than how he usually is, so that he can finally get married this year. She then excitedly describes all the women she thinks would be best suited for him, but no matter how grand and qualified these women are in her eyes, Rexid keeps turning all of them down. Infuriated, she decides to leave. But he then asks a very head-scratching question, whether he should do explicit things with his soon-to-be wife. He apologizes, saying that he really doesn't see himself being married, as is evident from what happened with him and Farah. He then shyly admits that the only woman he feels comfortable touching is her. Not in an intimate way. Honestly, he doesn't even understand it himself, but it seems that Rosa understands. He then asks further, if he ever touches someone else, would she even care at all? Rosa tells him that there's no reason for her to be bothered if he kisses other women, even if it bothers Rexid himself. He has to come to the realization that when he gets married, it's customary for him to engage in such behavior. Dismayed upon hearing her explanation, he asks if she is also willing to kiss another man, which makes her flustered. Embarrassed, she answers yes, but explains that it would still be difficult for her because she has poison in her mouth. Rexid giggles as if he's relieved about something. She then tells him that the reason he's still so attached to her is that he has no experience with other women, but she's certain that once he does, he'll never look in her direction again. The two then wager a bet. If Rexid ever finds himself attracted to a woman, he has to pursue her, and if he doesn't, he will date Rosa. She agrees, but only if he will consider the women she deems suitable for him. Rexid is already satisfied with this. He's confident that he will find no other woman attractive, and is already playing out the scenario in his head where he and Rosa become a couple. After ending this discussion, she is also positive that she's going to win, when suddenly she trips and falls into Rexid's arms. The awkward silence between Rosa and Rexid is deafening. She then, afraid, asks if he's going to help her or throw her inside the tub, to which he jests that he might just do the latter. Embarrassed, he decides to dismiss everything Rosa is saying and simply asks her to leave. But as he keeps asking her to leave, the more Rosa wants to stay. He then intimidatingly yet charmingly asks her to leave while he's still in a good mood. Later that day, Rosa listens to Sena talk about her baby, which is going to be a week before its due date. She ponders that she can never imagine herself being pregnant. Not that she wants to either. Sena then asks if she's allowed to go out and if it would be possible to go along with the Crown Prince, to which Rosa agrees to discuss it with him later. When Rosa visits Rexid soon after, he immediately flicks his head at the idea of putting a middle-aged man named Rohan de Eisen among the list of possible wives. He then says that he doesn't fancy any of the women because he thinks they're all the same. Except for a certain someone, Rosa. Embarrassed, she only answers his former question, not the latter, saying that she also doesn't know anything about it, which is why she wants to ask him as well. Rexid then shares the tragic story of Rohan, who lost both his wife and unborn child. Rohan is a royal who married a commoner, so naturally his family would oppose their relationship. Rumors have it that the disappearance of his wife and child was orchestrated by the royal family. Perhaps the reason his name is mentioned here is because he's still searching for them both. Even Rexid admits that if that ever happens to him, he will ruthlessly find his loved ones. He kind of implies that he's talking about Rosa. He then moves on, asking what her concern was earlier. That afternoon, Rosa arrives, ready to accompany Sena to the city. Shortly after, Rexid arrives, whom Rosa chastises for being late. Sena also wonders if they won't bring along any guards, but Rexid reassures them that if anything happens, he is here to protect them. Upon arrival at the establishment, Rexid and Rosa can already tell there's something off about the place. Meanwhile, Sena seems so pleased. After the three of them enter, the coachman, who was sleepy, is suddenly attacked by an assassin, but the coachman effortlessly catches his hand. The coachman beats up the assassin, prompting the rest of the knights to come out of the coach. So they secretly brought guards after all. Meanwhile, Rexid, Rosa, and Sena meet with the owner of the store shortly after Sena reveals her true intentions, as they separate Rexid and Rosa. He asks why she would betray Raven, to which she exclaims that he is the one who's betraying her beloved, making Rexid even more confused. Earlier, Rosa informed Rexid that Sena is a traitor who plans on betraying him. Though she was skeptical at first, her suspicion was confirmed when Sena met Owen. Owen is very good at impersonating Raven as the Crown Prince, but if someone has known Raven for 10 years, such as Sena, Owen would be easily discovered. She probably already knows that Raven is dead, but she pretended not to know because of her own agendas. And since Rexid tried to avoid being accused, he became the primary suspect in Raven's murder. Thus, it was revealed that the reason why Sena is a traitor is that she wants to help in his assassination, because she thinks Rexid is the one who killed him. His heart breaks. He can't believe that she really thinks he killed Raven. It seems that's the case. Sena thinks he's not responsible, but she knows others won't buy it. Still, she can no longer trust him, even if he claims to protect her and the baby. Rexid is too naive, which is why he's cornered right now. Yes, Sena knows that Rexid couldn't have possibly killed Raven, but in the end, he still failed to protect him. And as it turns out, the assassins are after both of them, not just Rexid. He then tells her to use the scroll of teleportation to escape. He wants her to use the resentment she has for him as a drive to live. After she vanishes, Rexid is left with a swarm of assassins in the room. But it's not that he's trapped with them. They're trapped there at his mercy. Meanwhile, Rosa is trapped with Tarantula. Though she predicted everything that has unfolded so far, being with him is not something she anticipated. She knows he possibly can't recognize her with the heiress face, so she has to act dumb. But to her surprise, he doesn't even try to play dumb. He easily admits to being affiliated with deadly assassins, perhaps even with Raven's murderer. She then asks why he would do such things, but he wants them to exchange information instead. Without delay, he then asks about a notorious swindler named Viper. Apparently, news spread that she's dead, but Tarantula doesn't think so. He leans forward, smelling her all over. Soon after, he menacingly asks her why she would help Rexid. Back then, Tarantula was always able to smell Rosa because her scent is like a Rochelia. Knowing that she's been caught, she no longer tries to hide her identity anymore. Rosa proudly proclaims that she's not going to be killed easily. This makes Tarantula grab her hair and try to remove her disguise to see if this really is her true face. But this is futile because he can't even tell. She then asks him who orchestrated the murder of the late Crown Prince, and he answers Grand Duke Rexid Van Hexen, but Rosa finds this hard to believe. Tarantula then asks her to come with him, but she refuses because the person who's going to die soon is not Rexid, but rather him. She knows he's smart, but why on earth would he come here knowing that he'll die? He then tells her that he came because of her, and that he's fully aware this was all meticulously planned by Rosa to find the culprit of Raven's murder. But this also works in his favor because he just wants to know some things. He then asks if the reason she's helping Rexid is because she likes him, to which she passionately agrees. But of course, that's not the only reason. She's helping him because of the spell. This prompts Tarantula to wonder what's it like to have feelings for someone. She then offers him to work with her rather than be killed by her later on, but he refuses because it's going to be hard due to his urge to kill Rexid. An urge that started because Rosa harbors feelings for him. He then threatens her that the next time they meet, she shouldn't talk about irrational things like liking Rexid because it makes him want to kill Rexid even more. Suddenly, the wall breaks, revealing a bloodied Rexid, and soon after, Tarantula escapes. The assassins enter the scene, worried that they haven't called them in yet. Rexid then tells them to stop fooling around and get to work, but they keep interrupting him and Rosa. He then notices her quiet demeanor, but she explains that it's because they had already anticipated this. What's important here is that Sena managed to escape. He then tells Rosa how much grudge Sena holds against him because even though he didn't kill Raven, he's still partially responsible for failing to protect him. Rosa tells him not to let it deject him because there was no way he could have protected Raven, no matter how great Rexid is. Later, Red, one of the assassins, introduces himself to Rosa and presents the other assassins: Blue, Black, Gold, and Silver. An irritated Rexid interrupts them and tells them to work on the hostage. Soon after, Rosa then pretends to be a damsel concerned about the well-being of the hostage to persuade Rexid to confess to something. She then approaches and leans in, whispering, unbeknownst to Rexid and the other assassins, that he's only following instructions. Before the hostage can even speak, he perishes, revealing that he was under a spell all along. Curious, Rosa asks what kind of spell it is. Rexid answers that it's the same as Owen's. Whenever a person is about to reveal classified information, the spell immediately triggers. Though, in Owen's case, it triggers if he fails to assassinate someone. Rosa's heart races with the idea that the mastermind behind all of this casts a spell on all of the assassins and has Tarantula as their strategist. This alone excites Rosa. She then asks Rexid for more information regarding the spell, but he has no clue about the intricate details. She then focuses on the more important matter: Rexid's wounds. Upon closer inspection, they head back. Elsewhere, Tarantula returns to his quarters with a masked individual. Unable to contain himself, he curses Rexid and threatens to kill him. He's upset that Rexid took his pet, Viper. He seems to have completely lost it, conceitedly thinking he's going to get her for himself. Meanwhile, Rosa is stitching Rexid's wounds, but he squirms because she's not a real physician. Well, what is she supposed to do? Call a real doctor and tell the whole world that he just killed 11 people? Rosa continues treating him, though he's a bit shy and reluctant. She teases him for this. Soon after, she asks him more about the spells. Rexid seems reluctant to say that he knows because Rosa might break her spell, even though hers is different. She denies this and continues sharing what she knows. She then goes on to explain how a spell potion works. Curious, he asks if she's planning to escape again, given how much she knows about poisons. She reassures him, but something bothers her. Why was Owen able to break away from the spell? Apparently, it's because of Rexid. He killed the person responsible for poisoning Owen. Upon understanding this, Rosa wishes to leave to write a letter to Farah about the sorceress. Rexid embraces Rosa, not wanting to let her go. He asks what she's going to do if she breaks free from the spell. Her answer is an immediate, resounding desire to escape. But she tells him that this is just a joke as he restrains her with his arms. He then begs her to just remain by his side, though she's quite unsure because they're up against a competent enemy, prompting her to explain about Tarantula. Tarantula is an intelligent, cunning, and unhinged individual. Though Rosa is a bit alarmed since he's targeting Rexid, she's still confident that she'll outsmart him. She then tells him not to die. He responds by saying he's more determined to live now than ever. She asks him to let her go, but he tells her they can just rest together instead. Rexid doesn't want to let Rosa go because he's afraid that if she leaves, no one will take care of the pain. Seeing that he's really not going to budge, she gives in since he's also being so cute. The following morning, Marcia wakes up Rosa, who's confused because this has never happened before. Marcia waking her up. She then vividly remembers what happened last night. Rexid immediately hides beside the bed, embarrassed. He then unabashedly lies that Rosa's the one who insists on staying beside him. Annoyed, she wants the blanket untied right this instant, which Rexid swiftly fulfills. But just as the blanket unties, she almost falls once again and lands in his arms for Marcia to see, giving her even more reason to get excited for the two. Later that day, Marcia explains to Rexid and Rosa that they should both be careful next time since rumors can easily spread, especially among the servants. But then again, all these negative rumors will subside if they marry each other. Rosa then asks Marcia to handle the servants and prevent the rumors from spreading further, but Marcia says she already did all of that. For Rosa, this is really troublesome. If only Rexid had started dating the woman she chose for him, then this conundrum wouldn't have happened in the first place. It's obvious that Rexid is interested in Rosa, which means he's also interested in women in general. Way to go with that logic! To win the deal she had, Rosa uses her other identity, Sue, a maid, to spread rumors about Rexid seeing other noble women. But it seems she still has a lot to work on. Sue, aka Rosa, continues her effort to fight rumors with rumors. But no matter how much she tries, the rumors about her and Rexid being a thing are much more widespread. In fact, it's leading in a direction far worse than the original rumors. No matter how much she insists that Rosa and Rexid don't like each other, the maids seem to think otherwise. They're also spot on in believing that what Marcia told them was just an excuse to hide the truth from them. Determined to win the bet, she uses her identity as Sue to make Rexid comfortable around other women aside from Rosa. But this is harder than she thought because he won't even let her in. As he continues being stubborn, Sue becomes increasingly irritated by Rexid's hard-headedness, even going so far as to tarnish Rosa's name. But instead of opening the door to hear more from her, he tries to convince Sue that Rosa is kind. Soon after, he finally opens the door, and upon entering, she wonders why it seems so easy to get along with him as Sue. Rexid tells Sue that he's going to take off his clothes because he's going to exercise. She then asks him if he's going to exercise, knowing that he's injured, but he tells her that it's fine. Sue is really confused as to why he has to work out when there's a maid around, making her think that perhaps he's not that awkward around women after all. He then asks her to sit on his back as he does push-ups. Though she hesitates at first, she eventually agrees. Rexid continues doing his push-ups, showing off to Sue by even doing a one-handed push-up, genuinely impressing her. Rexid then actually tries to flirt with her, which surprises Sue. He continues to flirt, and before she knows it, she finds herself pinned on the bed. She then remembers that every word that came out of his mouth sounds all too familiar. He says the things he said before when they had a conversation as Rosa. As Rexid does push-ups while Sue is pinned down under him, he leans in for a kiss. Does he perhaps know all along? Well, yeah, he really did know all along. Though Rosa is certain that he knew, Rexid didn't want to satisfy her curiosity by answering her questions. She insists, noting that it would be crucial to learn from her mistakes, but he proudly tells her that she didn't do anything wrong at all, and that it's just that his instincts are top-notch. Hearing this makes Rosa wonder if she carries a certain type of smell. But that's still not the case at all. Rosa can't believe that she got caught. Her pride won't let her acknowledge it. Rexid laughs in her face, seeing the look of defeat. He then tells her to give up, but she wants to fight. He declares that he's going to be the first to ever beat her. He once again pins her down and asks to continue with the exercise. Not wanting to be beaten in a flirting game, she tells him they'll do a different exercise. Something more intimate if he wins the bet. As she leaves, she becomes increasingly flustered and even more determined to win this bet. Rosa sets the record straight to Marcia. She and Rexid aren't in a relationship. Hearing this, Marcia is shocked and in disbelief, especially since Rexid looks so fond of Rosa. Luckily, she doesn't push the matter, probably noticing how sensitive Rosa is about the topic. But Marcia makes one thing clear, though. She just wishes for Rexid to live a happy life. Afterward, Rosa sulks in the garden, and Marcia's words echo repeatedly in her head. Unexpectedly, Rexid sneaks up behind her, a bouquet of tulips in his hands. He casually offers them to Rosa, but it only makes her sulk more. With a sad gaze, she stares at the flowers, wondering why he gave them to her. Could it be perhaps that he likes her? He may have said that he only picked them up on the way, but Rosa knows better. Rosa's mind is plagued with thoughts about Rexid. She knows that she and Rexid just aren't meant to be. He's the future emperor. He should marry someone with a noble background, even if it's against his will. Girl, I doubt he'd marry anyone but you. But then again, her priority is Rexid's happiness. Even if he becomes emperor, everything will all be for naught if he isn't happy. Her dampened spirits don't go unnoticed by Rexid. From beside her, he finally speaks up, telling her she shouldn't worry about his happiness. Sensing her thoughts, Rexid tells Rosa not to change her plans for his sake. If marrying a stranger helps fulfill their goals, so be it. He won't get in the way. Without another word, he then retreats indoors, leaving Rosa behind. In his study, Rexid begins writing a letter to Raven. He speaks of finally giving tulips to someone, a gesture Raven once said symbolized true love. As he writes, Rexid reflects on Raven and Sena's tragic love story, a forbidden love. Finally, he understands what it feels to love, and he goes on to write about his brilliant tactician, Rosa, how smart and amazing she is, and how someday he's determined to marry her. I guess deep down he knows Raven would have supported him. Just thinking about Rosa makes Rexid's heart race. Recalling their earlier talk, he blushes. Why did she have to confront him about liking her? Having written enough, Rexid concludes the letter and burns it, hoping some divine force will carry his words to Raven. Elsewhere, in Levita, Princess Farah receives a letter from Rosa. Though Rosa can't attend her coronation, she sends her warmest wishes. She also shares her growing interest in sorcerers, making Farah smile because she just happens to know one, Madame Lolan. Suddenly, a baby's cries interrupts her. She rushes to a small room divider, revealing Sena and her baby, both under Farah's care. Excuse me? I'm so confused when this happened. Apparently, when Sena used the scroll to escape, she was unexpectedly teleported to Farah's palace. Farah looks like she was already expecting Sena, though. She gently explained that teleportation scrolls work in pairs. You're supposed to place a second scroll in the place you wanted to teleport to. Since Sena hadn't, the magic redirected her to the owner of the object she carried, Farah. It turns out Rosa had given Sena Farah's necklace before their outing, planning everything in advance. Standing tall, Farah assured Sena of her safety. She may not know her well, but because Rosa asked her, Farah is more than willing to protect her. At present, Farah checks on Sena and her baby. She also asks for her necklace back since she plans to send it back to Rosa when she deploys a diplomatic delegation to Drax. Days later, Rosa and Rexid are startled when Levita's delegation arrives unannounced. From the group, an old woman steps forward, introducing herself as Lolandi Aslan. She gives Rosa a letter from Farah and introduces Argon, a white falcon capable of delivering letters in 2 days. Then, the woman reveals her identity. She's the last sorcerer of House Aslan. Rosika and Rexid are awestruck. Lolin, however, is fixated on Rosika's pink hair. It's just like the Aslan bloodlines. But as Rexid reels from the remark, Rosika grabs his arm, boldly revealing his mysterious mark to Lolin. Lolin instantly recognizes the mark. It's a spell that can't be undone unless the bearer dies. Realizing Rexid and Rosika's lives are now bound together, she wonders why he'd inflict such a cruel fate on her. Guilt-ridden, Rexid explains it wasn't him who cast it. Knowing this, Lolin admits that while the spell can't be undone, it can be lifted, though it takes 3 years. Unfortunately, time isn't on her side as she withers with old age. Though the revelation is grim, Rosika doesn't dwell on it for long. After all, she has a more pressing question for Lolin. Later, in her chambers, Rosika assists Lolin while she bathes. They talk, and Lolin reveals Rosika looks like her long-lost daughter, who is also a sorcerer. When Rosika mentions a rogue spellcaster, Lolin's heart sinks. But if it's a malicious sorcerer, she's certain that it isn't her daughter. We never know. Eventually, Rosika joins her in the bath and asks about another mysterious mark on her body. Lolin identifies it as a connection spell. Somewhere there's someone with the same mark, but inverted. But unlike the one with Rexid, this spell depends on Rosika's life. If she dies, the other person dies too. Rosika is shaken. She's had it since birth. Who cast it? Lolin, however, reassures her not to worry. If she worries, it should be about the binding spell with Rexid because there's more to it than they realize. That night, Rosika bursts into Rexid's room. She has no time to lose. She needs to tell him everything Lolin just revealed. Meanwhile, at Duke Frania's manor, Tarantula arrives and is greeted by Duchess Rachel Frania, Rexid's older sister. He demands to see Ernie, and the Duchess reluctantly leads him to the dungeons. There, he confesses he needs more spell potions, this time to kill Rexid, Duchess Rachel's own brother. The Duchess is visibly stunned, but gets no chance to object. In a dim cell, a fragile sorceress is held captive, one with pink hair matching Rosika's. Could this be Lolin's lost daughter? Could she be Rosika's mother? Following Tarantula's order, the Duchess stays outside. Alone with the sorceress, he greets her by name, Duchess Ernie Eisen. Eisen as in Duke Eisen's missing wife? Without delay, he demands a spell potion, one that makes a person's heart explode if they fail to complete a task on time. Horrified, Ernie refuses to make such a deadly concoction, displeasing Tarantula. But she's in no position to say no when Tarantula uses her own daughter against her. Just as we expected, Duchess Ernie is, indeed, Rosika's mother. She even has the inverted mark that matches Rosika's. Unless she complies, Tarantula swears he'll kill her daughter. Heck, he claims that the only reason why her daughter is still alive is because he, Tarantula, harbors feelings for her. Unfortunately for Tarantula, he can't have Rosika because someone else already has her heart, which is exactly why he needs the spell potion to kill Rexid. Now desperate to save her daughter's life, Ernie agrees to make it for him without hesitation. Meanwhile, back at Drax Manor, Rosika tells Rexid their bet is on hold. Not because she hates him, but rather because only she should be the recipient of his love lest they suffer painful deaths. Rexid is obviously flustered, but he shudders at her exaggeration. To his horror, she reveals that she isn't exaggerating. They could literally die because of the spell. Initially, she was going to see their original plan through, but now she realizes they don't have the luxury of time. They need to find the enemy sorcerer and break the spell. It turns out there's more to the spell than they realized. The spell in question is the spell of eternal love, one crafted by a mad sorcerer who was obsessively infatuated with his wife. Fearing that she'll abandon him one day, he created a spell with 3 stages. The first stage has already been activated by Rexid's trust in Rosika, allowing him to track Rosika anytime. The second stage, to communicate with each other telepathically, has yet to be activated by Rosika since she still doesn't trust Rexid enough. And the cherry on top, the third stage. Their hearts could literally explode as soon as they start harboring affection for other people. Rexid is beyond horrified at the spell's implications. An ancient spell like this one? People hardly ever bothered to know all its conditions and effects. Over time, the spell of eternal love had just been reduced to master and slave bindings. Unfortunately for them, their contract is nothing like master and slave. It's a partnership built on trust, which literally just activated stage 1 of the spell. There's only one thing left to do now: find the enemy sorcerer and have them break the spell. But the question is, where do they even begin looking for the sorcerer or the mastermind? Grand Duke Rayid is their top guess. But what if it isn't him? Realizing what Rosa means, Rexid feels a pang in his heart at having to consider other contenders for the throne. The fourth and fifth in line for succession, Duke and Duchess Frania, his own sister and brother-in-law, and their children too. With their prime suspects figured out, Rexid then decides to deploy an assassin to each of their residences. All that's left now is to gather information and evidence. Luckily for them, stage 2 of the spell hasn't been activated yet, and although Rexid may feel offended that Rosa doesn't trust him enough, there's no denying that it's the only thing buying them time. However, trust may not be the only thing to activate stage 2. Blushing profusely, Rosa sheepishly asks that Rexid doesn't try anything that may seduce her. In the following days, Rosa's mind can only wonder about Ahel and Owen. It's been weeks, so they should have carried out the plan by now. For all her swindling and scamming, Rosa can only hope karma doesn't play cruel tricks on her by going after the people she cherishes. Owen and Ahel must come back safely. Far from Drax, specifically in Grand Duke Rayid's central estate, Raven, or at least Owen pretending to be Raven, sits with the Grand Duke for a little discussion. Their topic for the day? Rexid's barbarian-like behavior. While Grand Duke Rayid understands the close relationship between the two, he dare insinuate that Raven refrained from associating himself with Rexid. What the Grand Duke doesn't expect, though, is for Raven to completely disagree with him. Remembering Rosa's orders, Owen devises to create a scene that puts the Grand Duke and Raven at odds with each other. Maids gather around the room as Raven fumes with anger, berating the Grand Duke for thinking so lowly of Rexid, a man who managed to command an army to protect the borders of the Empire. He's a hero, and so much more than the barbarian they think he is. Back at Drax's palace, Rosa expresses how she truly believes that Rexid's got both brain and brawn to be emperor. In fact, she wants to hear all about his life before they met. 8 years ago, in the petty kingdom of Pelkin, Raimish Arak, Pelkin's commander, ordered Owen to assassinate Rexid van Hexen, then commander of the Imperial Army. In the dead of night, Owen sneaked into Rexid's tent, only to be disarmed in seconds. Face to face, Rexid recognized Owen's talent at first glance. He couldn't believe someone was skilled enough to assassinate his guards and sneak up on him. Despite being apprehended, Owen remained unwilling to cooperate with Rexid in any way. It turns out Owen was bound by a spell, one that kills him if he fails to assassinate Rexid by sunrise. Knowing this, Rexid couldn't believe how inhumane Raimish was towards his subordinates. He doesn't know why Owen pledged allegiance to Raimish in the first place. But if there's one thing he does know, it's that true leaders don't expend their lives of their subordinates and comrades as if they were dispensable. Something pulled at Owen's heartstrings. For the leader that Raimish was, he would have stayed loyal to him towards the end, even without the spell. To save Owen, Rexid did the unthinkable. He beheaded Raimish to break the spell. In the present, Rexid worries about Owen. He just wishes Owen would come back already. What he doesn't know is that Owen is just behind him. Finally reunited, Rexid can't help but tackle Owen into a bear hug. Owen is touched that Rexid is worried about him, but he barely recovers before Rosa storms in and tackles him with yet another hug. Tearfully, she expresses her relief at his return. Keeping up his usual nonchalance, Owen quickly shifts back into butler mode, escorting them to the dining hall without commenting on their reactions. Still, Rosa's tear-streaked face lingers in his mind, and a blush creeps up on his cheeks. Rosa may have just won a piece of his heart. Later, Ahel confesses his doubts to Rosa. After the mission with Owen, he believes that it's impossible for Rexid to become emperor. Outsmarting Tarantula is a long shot, and it doesn't help that the public already thinks poorly of Rexid. Ahel has clearly given up. While he won't interfere with Rosa's efforts, he doesn't want to be dragged into it either, which is why he wants the antidote already. Surprisingly, Rosa agrees, but with a condition. They'll leave for the capital in 2 days. She'd appreciate his help, but it's his choice. She only hopes he'll think it through in the meantime. Just then, Lolan arrives with a request. She wants to visit her son-in-law in the capital, but unexpectedly, Rosa refuses. Tarantula is still after them, and it's far too dangerous to bring her with them. But clever as ever, Rosa is willing to find another way for Lolan to meet him. Lolan reveals she wants to tell her son-in-law the truth. Ernay's death was never his fault. Ernay is her daughter! Long ago, Lolan disapproved of Ernay marrying a high-born man. The couple eloped to his homeland, the Eisenbach kingdom, only to face rejection from his family too. With no other choice, the man defected to Hexen and renounced his title, an act that finally earned Lolan's approval. But tragedy struck soon after. an assassin sent by the man's own family took Ernie's life right after their wedding. If this story sounds familiar, it should, because it's the same backstory as Duke Rohan de Eisen's. That's right, Lolan reveals that her son-in-law is Duke Eisen, a former royal of Eisenbach and now a noble of Hexen. Rosa is stunned, but she wonders if Erne is truly dead. She could have been kidnapped for her abilities. But Lolan doubts it. Erne kept her sorcerer identity secret, as most sorcerers do to stay safe. Even Princess Farah only recently learned about Lolan's identity. Still, Lolan breaks down. Speaking to Duke Eisen is now her dying wish. That night, Rosa shares everything with Rexid, who's equally stunned. She confesses her suspicion. The enemy sorcerer might be Erne. If she's right, they might win Duke Eisen to their side. But regardless of what happens, Rexid is confident they won't die from the spell. He'll never fall for another woman. Flustered, Rosa storms off, reminding him not to seduce her. Hexenbaum, the capital of Hexen, is dawned with a grim day. Prince Raven's death has just been announced, and the Emperor tearfully cradles Raven's body as it's brought before him. Meanwhile, in Drax, Rosa's Elferite ring loses its color, signifying the death of the imperial heir. Does it lose its color automatically, or when the death is officially announced? Because wouldn't it have lost its color the moment the real Raven died? Anyway, everyone at Drax Palace begins their preparations to attend Raven's funeral at the capital. Before they head out, Lolan sees Rosa off, handing her a potion that can counter enchantments. How can she ever thank Lolan enough? Soon enough, Owen asks Rosa to board the carriage already, but she finds herself hesitating. Where is a Hell? Just when she thinks he isn't coming, a Hell comes running towards the carriage. As soon as they're face to face with each other, Rosa shoves the antidote in his hands, assuming that's the only reason he saw her off. To her surprise, a Hell is actually still willing to continue working with her. Unable to control her excitement and gratitude, she lunges at him, enveloping him in a hug. But quick as ever, Rexid instantly pulls a Hell away, reminding Rosa about the spell. Nah, that was pure jealousy right there. Finally, after an exhausting 1.5-month journey, they arrive at the capital. Their first stop? Duke Eisen's manor. It is said that it's been 10 years since Duke Eisen showed his face in public. Even his manor is looking pretty worn down. To their dismay, Duke Eisen refuses to see them, but someone as hot-headed as Rexid, who's traveled a month to get here, certainly isn't taking no for an answer. With one swift motion, he knocks out one of the guards, shocking everyone. Not so diplomatic, Mr. Future Emperor. He then turns to the other guard, asking him to relay a message to the Duke. If he doesn't show himself in 10 minutes, there's no telling what Rexid will do. A while later, they gawk when Duke Eisen makes an appearance. However, he's only come to personally turn them down. Whether it's Rexid or Raven's funeral, he isn't in the mood to socialize with people. Seeing him head back, Rosa panics, fearing they'll lose the opportunity to talk to him. Overtaking everyone, she personally converses with the Duke. But as soon as he gazes upon her, he's brought to his knees in tears. Rosa looks just like his wife, Erne. His entire mood shifts, and when he finally regains his composure, he immediately welcomes them inside, much to their surprise. Inside, a stark realization dawns on Rosa. Duchess Erne was pregnant when she went missing. For reasons unknown, she gets a gut feeling that she's still alive somewhere. When things settle down, Rexid and Duke Eisen have a formal talk. But it's futile trying to get the Duke to attend Raven's funeral. Duke Eisen, however, is more interested in Rosa. Question after question, he asks Rexid all about her, where she's from, and who her birth parents are. Eventually, this annoys him, and he ultimately tells him to lay off, thinking the Duke is interested in Rosa romantically. Our male lead really isn't the sharpest tool in the shed. Mid-conversation, Duke Eisen's hands tremble. He hesitates for a while, then he ultimately lights a cigar made with leprosyn, a highly addictive herb. Seeing this, Rexid realizes just how tough life has been for the Duke. He's totally turned to addiction to cope. Sometime later, the Duke finally composes himself enough to face Rosa. Looking at her, his gaze softens as if she were a distant memory he once cherished. Cutting to the chase, Rosa admits that she and the Duke have a common acquaintance. However, it's too soon for her to divulge who it is. Ever the strategist, she asks that he grant her a favor first, to accommodate them for 2 more days. But almost instantly, the Duke agrees, making Rosa beam with joy. Seeing her happy reminds him so much of his wife that it practically hurts him. With his heart throbbing painfully, Duke Eisen excuses himself shortly, but not before telling Rosa that he'll be attending Raven's funeral after all. The morning after, Rosa prepares the Duke a gift: alternative cigars that don't harm his health. The item itself impresses Owen, and he offers to fetch her supplies himself if she needs any. However, Rosa assures him that there's no need for such a gesture because she plans to head downtown herself, just to check on Rexid's reputation among the public. Disguising herself as a little boy, Rosa tries to execute her plan, but stops when she comes across injustice. Right before her, Imperial guards are forcefully trying to capture a woman who's lost her child, claiming he's been kidnapped by Viscount Perman. Rosa interferes, but the guards are quick to threaten her too. However, that all changes when Rexid himself intervenes. Seeing him there, Rosa immediately starts spewing out praise, recounting all his efforts for the Empire loud enough for people to hear. Turning to the guards, Rexid orders them to let the woman go, dismissing them shortly after. Unbeknownst to all of them, among the crowd is a cloaked tarantula who watches them with amusement. Later, inside the carriage, Rosa finally changes out of her disguise. She has a bone to pick with that Viscount Perman guy, but lucky for him, they still have a lot on their plate right now. In all seriousness, Rosa then turns to Rexid. Would he come to save her if she gets abducted? Duh! Is that even a real question? I'm sure he'd turn the Empire upside down just to find you. We'll stop here for today, guys. Yes, I know you want more. Don't forget to ask for the next part in the comment section. Thank you guys for watching and for your support. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Till the next one.